Chapter 3. No Room for Heretics. Colin twisted and kicked, but the man's powerful grip did not loosen. In exhaustion and utter helplessness, Colin went limp. At once the man released him. "Easy, lad. Don't make any noise. I don't want them to know we're here." Jake's voice rumbled in Colin's ear. "Mind not a sound." Colin nodded, rubbing his arms. "My men are right behind me." Jake nodded over his shoulder. "We've known for a long time that the priests have been talking against Sir William. We've all heard them one time or another at the village. You can take my word for it. We're not going to let anything happen to Sir William." Jake parted the shrubbery and peered out. Colin stood on tiptoe behind him and looked too. William Tyndale was facing the monks and priests, many of them with upraised staffs. Yet no one seemed ready to hit Tyndale. "What is it you want?" Tyndale asked the group. A monk muffled in brown robe and cowl stepped forward. His cowl slipped off, revealing the man's full face. He had the reddest beard Colin had ever seen. His hair was a darker red. Colin heard Tyndale gasp. "John, John Teeson," he said. "What are you doing this far from Oxford?" John Teeson's small, wide-set eyes narrowed. "I'm not your scholar any more, Sir William. I have done much penance for the untruths you taught." Colin jerked in silent protest. At once, Jake's hand clamped on his shoulder in warning. Colin watched the scene taking place in front of him. "So you became a monk?" William Tyndale asked his former pupil. The red-bearded man shrugged. "I am in Cardinal Wolsey's service." He smiled in a one-sided sly way. "You mean you're a spy?" William Tyndale's voice deepened in contempt, and John Teeson flinched. Colin could see a spasm cross his face. "Sir William, why do you go against the Church's policy?" John Teeson asked. "The path you are following leads to sure destruction. I warn you that I have taken my stand against heretics." For some reason, these words caused many of the group to relax and lower their staves. Colin caught sight of a movement in a nearby field. A young boy had stopped his oxen and picked his way over the fresh furrows toward the road. Colin could see both fear and curiosity in the boy's face. William Tyndale glanced at the boy and then back at the group. "The path I'm following, John, means that if God spares my life, before many years I will cause a boy who drives a plow to know more of the Scripture than you do." At these words, the monks and priests set up such a shout that the plowboy ran back to his oxen. Jake motioned his men to come over. "Take him to Chancellor Parker," a priest shouted. The group closed in around Tyndale and half pushed and half carried him toward the village. "What will you do now?" Colin implored Jake. "We'll go the other way around the village and hide outside the meeting place. The villagers will help us. We'll fight if we have to." "Lady Walsh told me to keep Sir William in sight," Colin said. "Then you follow them, and mind that you don't show yourself." Jake led his men in another direction. At the village, Colin saw the group take William Tyndale to a small meeting room. There was no guard at the door, and Colin slipped behind a wooden column to listen. His heart beat so loud he was afraid someone would hear, but all the men were talking at once. "What have we here?" the Chancellor roared. "Chancellor Parker, this is William Tyndale, who preaches against the faith," John Teeson replied. In a voice of authority, William Tyndale asked, "What is it you have against me?" "This man is a heretic," John Thiessen said. "And where are your witnesses to my heresy?" William Tyndale said. "Let them come forward, and I will answer them." From the rustle and scraping of feet, Colin expected several to witness against Tyndale, but the movements subsided into nervous coughs and clearing of throats. The Chancellor himself began to accuse Tyndale. "I've heard about you. I understand you called monks and friars of the church caterpillars, horse leeches, and drone bees. You make a little gnat into a great elephant," Tyndale replied. "Is this all you accuse me of? How is it that you dare speak of translating the Bible into English?" Colin clung to the column. A sudden overpowering heat filled the room. It was as if hate and fear rolled out in waves. Then he became aware of William Tyndale's cool, quiet strength. It flashed into Colin's mind that Tyndale was praying, and it seemed to Colin that God was filling Tyndale with his power. "The gospel must speak to us in the language of our own people," Tyndale urged. "Christians must read the Bible in their mother tongue." Hisses and growls rose from the group. Colin peered out. All he could see was a mass of upraised, clenched fists, and he quickly drew back. He was helpless. Then he realized he was supposed to go back to the manor house, but it was too late now. Chancellor Parker quieted the group. "The truth is before the people in the way God meant it," he snapped to Tyndale. "He gives it personally to the ordained. God did not tell those who performed divine service in Latin to be ignorant of what they read," Tyndale replied, calm and decisive. "You think you can say these things because you're protected by a rich man?" the Chancellor said. "You'll find out otherwise." A priest spoke out. "Do not bring Sir John's name into this. He is a powerful gentleman in this country." The Chancellor grunted. "I say to you, Sir William, that it's the favour of the gentry of the country that makes you so proud. But you shall not always live in a fine manor house. I've never preached anything that cannot be justified from the New Testament." Tyndale said, "But I ask, has not God made the English tongue as well as Latin?" The uproar this time was tremendous. Colin looked out in time to see John Thiessen swing his staff over his head. "Shall we listen any longer? Shall this man pollute and poison innocent people's minds?" The others howled a response. "No, no!" They lunged toward Tyndale, with arms upraised. Colin shouted a warning. Jake and 8 or 10 sturdy peasants, armed with mallets and stones, swarmed into the room. "Stop!" The Chancellor's command was more a pathetic screech than an order. "The Church will excommunicate all of you." Jake planted his feet apart and waved his mallet. "We have no quarrel with the Church. No quarrel at all. But we want our Sir William to stay right here. Isn't that so?" The peasants shouted a ringing yes, echoed by villagers coming in the door. "That may be," the Chancellor said, "but it is against the law for anyone to translate the Bible into English. That is heresy, and if this man is guilty, he will answer for it. But he hasn't done it yet, and the law holds no man accountable for what he hasn't done." Jake's angry voice filled the little building. There were mutters of assent. John Thiessen gripped his staff. "We will run him out of the country if he ever starts. You will see that he has no place to turn for help. will pursue him to the ends of the earth if necessary. Cardinal Wolsey will see to it. Tyndale mounted a bench and spread his hands over the group. Take away my goods, take away my good name. Yet so long as Christ dwells in my heart, so long shall I love you not a whit less for these words. Jake and his men made no move to go. With much grumbling and venomous undertones, the priests left. Colin ran up to Tyndale. What will they do now? He asked. Jake thumped his mallet on the floor. We'll keep you here safely. You need you're needed to help our sick and poor. Tyndale smiled. The church may send me where it will. If I have £10 a year to live on, and am bound to nothing but to teach children, preach, and fulfill my mission, I will be content any place in England. Dogs barked outside. Sir John, flushed and dishevelled, strode in. He ordered Jake and the peasants to go back to the fields at Little Sodbury. Then he turned to Tyndale. Sir William, unless you muzzle yourself, there certain to be other attacks on you. Your friends won't be able to save you every time. Now, tell me what happened. Outside, Sir John motioned to Colin to lead the horse. The two men walked ahead. Colin could see that Sir John was upset. He swung his riding whip back and forth, flicking a dog that came too close or nipping off the top of a plant. Chancellor Parker was not civil to me, Tyndale said, but he did not change my purpose. Christians must possess the Holy Scriptures in their own tongue. Without direct knowledge of the Bible, ordinary people can never know God's truth. Sir John swished his whip through the air. But heresy. Is it heretical to question why people must pray in a language they don't understand? Are we to teach our children this way? Look at Colin here. He's 10. He should be able to read the scriptures by himself. Maurice is 6. Do you want your own son to grow up in ignorance of God's truth? Sir John stopped. Of course I want my sons to be educated, but I must say I can't see my peasants quoting scripture. Why, first thing you know, they'll all be wanting to go to Oxford for an education. But you can stay at Little Sodbury as long as you wish. Just try to keep quiet about your translating, will you? William Tyndale put his hands behind his back and walked to one side of the road. Colin, puzzled, watched him. Sir John stood silent, as if he had come to a decision. Tyndale turned. Sir John, I perceive that I shall not be allowed to tarry long here, nor shall you be able to keep me out of the hands of the priests. I should be right sorry if anything unpleasant should ever occur. Colin was troubled by the words. What was Tyndale really saying? If you insist on translating the Bible into English, there's no question but that the priests will hound you. Tyndale looked up at Sir John. God knows what troubles you would expose yourself to by keeping me in your family. Permit me to leave you. The words struck Colin like a blow. He stared at the ground in misery. Would Tyndale really leave Little Sodbury and go to somewhere unknown place where Colin would never see him again? Sir John made a quick protest. How do you know that to go away isn't cowardly? Does God want you to flee before men? I'm now the instrument of God, Tyndale said. He knows the ways of men. Call it cowardice or what you will. I must accomplish my task by the means at hand, even by another name or in disguise if I must. As Colin listened, his desire to go with Tyndale, to be with him and help him, grew so strong He could hardly keep quiet. Sir John mounted his horse. "I'll go ahead and tell Lady Walsh about this," he said, then added, "Wouldn't someone at Cambridge help you get another preaching post?" "I know Fisher," Tyndale said, "but he's not in good repute with the church at present." "How about Langlands at Oxford?" Tyndale shrugged. "Useless. His episcopal career is already well established. He wouldn't take the risk with me. I don't know anymore. I don't know anyone I could count on. One of my own students led the group today. He's in Cardinal Wolsey's pay." Colin remembered the man with the red beard, John Teeson, and marveled that anyone who had been taught by William Tyndale could turn against him. Sir John dismounted. "If you wanted to go to London, I could write you a letter of introduction to Sir Henry Guildford, the King's Controller of the Household." William Tyndale brightened. "If I could be appointed chaplain in London, yes, that would be ideal." "You must go to Cuthbert Tunstall, the Bishop of London." Sir John sounded really excited. "He's the one who can help you." The two men talked on. Colin, head drooping, felt lonelier than he had ever had in his life. "But tone it down, Tyndale," Sir John was saying. "Try not to stir the people too much." William Tyndale laughed, an open, hearty laugh. For the first time that day, Colin felt the weight of dread lift from his own heart. Lady Walsh pounced on him and drew him to one side. "You were supposed to come back and report. If Sir John had known what Jake was up to, he would have prevented such a disgraceful display. We cannot afford to make the church and the cardinal our enemy, no matter how brilliant Sir William is. How Colin, now Colin, your first loyalty was to us. I'm sorry you saw fit to think otherwise. I'm sending you back to the fields. I don't want to see you around the house again." Heartsick and dismayed, Colin could only stare at Lady Walsh. Her face stern, she pointed toward the field. There was nothing for Colin to do but obey. He fought back his tears and stumbled away.